The PS1's library boasts literally dozens of games, and while the vast majority of the great ones have either been remastered, remade, or otherwise re-released on other platforms, there are plenty of whippers that are still stuck on Sony's first console. Officially. While some kind of additional release would be nice for any of these games, let's celebrate the PS1 equivalent of Ripley, Newt and Hicks, who are floating through space being totally alive and chill as we speak. Despite what the name would imply, Brave Fencer Musashi isn't about a guy with a rapier being brave. There's no fencing in this game at all, which seems like a clear-cut case of false advertising as far as we're concerned. However, Brave Fencer Musashi is an incredibly fun and underrated Square RPG on a console that Square practically dominated. Despite plenty of PS1 Square games earning additional love and re-releases over the years, Brave Fencer Musashi has been locked to the PS1 ever since its original release in 1998. Square did release a sequel for the PS2 in 2005 titled Musashi Samurai Legend, but that's the closest that Brave Fencer Musashi has come to breaking the shackles of its PS1 prison. So, what's it about? Well, you control Musashi, a young swordsman who has been summoned to defend a kingdom from the evil invaders known as the First Quencher Empire. No, really, it's not the Coca-Cola company either. The game plays like a 3D beat-em-up / action RPG, with Musashi trying to find 5 powerful scrolls in order to make his sword more powerful and bring defeat to those first quenching scoundrels. The combat itself is fairly simplistic, but never gets old, and there's a lot of fun to be had with the game's charm and vibrant graphics. The game even features voice acting, which was a rarity for RPGs at the time, and a pretty neat day and night cycle. Again, with Square updating a lot of its back catalogue of games over the years, it's weird that Brave Fencer Musashi has just been kinda left to rot on the PS1. Good luck finding a CIB copy of the game for less than $100 as well, but curse you Square for not bringing this to Europe to begin with. Also, curse this emu for being late to our business meeting. I hate when the emu is late. RPGs were the catch of the day when it came to the PS1, as you'll see with a few other entries on this list, so it's no wonder that a bunch of them slipped through the cracks as the console's lifespan went on. That doesn't mean they aren't good though, or have cult followings that deserve better, but it has meant that games like Legend of Legaia are locked to the PS1. Compared to other games that have been abandoned to older hardware, Legend of Legaia and its PS2 sequel have a much better chance of being re-released today, largely thanks to the fact that both games were published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Granted, said re-release would likely just be a straight port shoved onto the most expensive PlayStation Plus tier, but something would be better than no thing, right? Like all good turn-based RPGs, Legend of Legaia is set in a fantasy world of magic, where creatures called Seru are able to give humanity supernatural powers. However, some strange mist is causing the Seru to rampage, so protagonist Vaughn, not that one, sets out to stop it. It's a fairly standard RPG plot as your party increases during this quest to save the world, but what sets Legend of Legaia apart from other games is its approach to turn-based combat. Instead of picking just one move, you instead enter a combination of high and low attacks, which in turn unleashes art on your opponent. Multiple art can be unleashed in one turn depending on your inputs, allowing you to really stack up the damage if you play the game properly. Let's cross our fingers that we will see Legend of Legaia return at some point. It'd be a pretty incredible oversight if we didn't. From two games that at least have some kind of chance to appear on other platforms to a game that will probably be locked to the PS1 until the end of time, Incredible Crisis is a unique oddity of a game. Something you've likely already picked up from the game's cover art alone. A man's head is erupting like a volcano, while the font looks like it was ripped off the box of an Austin Powers movie. It's a bizarre hodgepodge, do you have that word in America? Of references and influences, but then you play the game and realise it's also a bizarre hodgepodge as well. The term "don't judge a book by its cover" clearly never took Incredible Crisis into consideration, but those who were curious about what kind of game this is would find a PS1 title like no other. Essentially a story-driven minigame compilation, Incredible Crisis follows the adventures of 4 members of the Tanamatsuri family: Father Taneo, Mother Etsuko, son Tsuyoshi, and daughter Ririka. Sorry if I murdered those, as each of them tried desperately to make it to Grandmother Hatsu's surprise birthday party. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, that is until each member of the family has to deal with UFOs, bank robbers, shrink rays, giant boulders that seem to sentiently follow them around, and a boat that nearly every member of the family almost manages to sink. There's a lot going on, and all of it is accompanied by music from the Tokyo Ska Paradise Orchestra, which doubles the amount of bonkers that this game is. Ska is for the insaniacs out there. It's a shame that Incredible Crisis is stuck on the PS1, as more people deserve to know about this ridiculous bit of brilliance. Technically, it did also come to arcades, but are you really going to pay thousands of dollars to import a huge cabinet? Yes! Yes! You are? Alright, get us one too. You know what doesn't get made anymore, but really should? Light gun games. During the PS1 and early days of the PS2, hell yeah, Vampire Knight, lots of developers tried to cash in on the arcade but at home feeling that comes with light gun games, but these days you barely find any new ones that get released at all. It's strange as well, given how both the PS5 and the Nintendo Switch both utilise motion sensing technology in the controllers, making a proper light gun game that much easier to make, but yeah, we get it now. We get it. The simple fact remains though that there are a wide array of light gun games that have been left on the PS1, and perhaps one of the best of the entire bunch is Elemental Gearbolt. While most light gun games have plots that amount to either stop the terrorists or shoot the zombies, Elemental Gearbolt is a sci-fi opera about oppression, the ruling class, and corpses being revived as living weapons. Look, yeah, it's a lot to follow, so all you need to know is that you should shoot everything that moves. There's 3 weapons to choose from here, each with their own characteristics, but the real gimmick of Elemental Gearbolt is its RPG mechanics, which allow you to level up and increase your overall durability as you progress through the game. Considering how intense light gun games can get at the best of times, being able to improve as Elemental Gearbolt gets harder and harder is a real blessing. What's not a blessing is how hard this is to play these days with the rising price of working CRTs as well. Let's at least get a Switch port or something, yeah? We might have gone a bit mad talking about the abundance of Square RPGs on the PS1 because look, another one. While most of the spotlight was given to games like Final Fantasy, Vagrant Story, which has had a couple of digital ports to later PS consoles, and Parasite Eve, which did get a PS3 port, Square's other RPGs were almost unceremoniously dumped onto the PS1, so it's no wonder that many of them have remained locked on the platform. Threads of Fate would fit that bill too, as it's a relatively obscure action RPG that features 2 protagonists vying for the same goal of an ancient relic that can grant any wish. If you're looking for a decent dungeon crawler from the PS1 era, Threads of Fate is the perfect game for you, even if it does have kind of a generic name. Forgotten Doctor Strange movie sounding ass. Well, what do you do in it? So, players control either Rue or Mint, who explore the hub town of Corona, along with its surrounding environments and dungeons, all in pursuit of that precious ancient relic. Each character's story is different, though they do intersect at key moments, with Rue being an amnesiac looking for the relic in the hopes of resurrecting his dead friend. Meanwhile, Mint is a selfish princess of the East Heaven Kingdom who's been banished by her sister and has now vowed to reclaim her throne and conquer the rest of the world using that relic. Talk about a girl boss, am I right guys? Considering you can get the CIB version for less than $100 Edinos, Threads of Fate is kind of a bargain as far as stranded PS1 games are concerned, but just port it. Just do it. UEP Systems isn't the most well-known development studio in the world, but those who recognise the name will remember them as the team behind the excellent Cool Borders franchise, which was released through 1996 to 2000 across the PS1, PS2, Dreamcast and Neo Geo Pocket Color. While 5 out of the studio's 6 total games involved the white stuff, today we're focusing on that 6th game, titled Rising Zan: The Samurai Gunman. As you might have inferred from the subtitle, Rising Zan takes place in a world that's a blend of East and Wild West, with samurais and cowboys being smashed together like a kid sticking two of their favourite toys together to create a brand new world. Rising Zan: The Samurai Gunman follows a young boy by the name of Johnny, who becomes sheriff of Suka Town. As is the case with many young sheriffs in the Wild West, Johnny is almost immediately ambushed and nearly killed. But the twist here is that Johnny is rescued by a samurai master. Johnny begins to study the ways of the blade, only to return to Suka Town years later as the super ultra sexy hero known as Zan. With a combination of swordplay, devilishly good looks, and a gun, Zan now has to contend with samurai ninjas and Loki, the evil samurai who nearly murdered him years earlier. It's not the most refined game ever made, but the style and aesthetic feels like a precursor to fellow cult hits like Samurai Western for the PS2 or even Red Seal 2 on the Wii. In short, more games about rootin' tootin' samurai, please. Here's another samurai game that never left the PS2, 7 Samurai 20XX, a futuristic reimagining of 7 Samurai that has a spelling mistake on the PAL spine. I love stupid mistakes like these on box art. Let me know if you have any in your collection down below. Square don't shove an RPG into one of your games challenge. What could have been with Ehrgeiz, God bless the ring? Clearly, the idea of Final Fantasy characters gathering for a bit of a scrap is worth something, as Square Enix have returned to that well a few times over the years with the Dissidia franchise. As well as sounding like a prayer you chat pre-Vindaloo, Ehrgeiz, God bless the ring gained a bit of notoriety in arcades for including Cloud and Tifa from Final Fantasy VII as part of the game's core roster. But the PS1 release took everything one step further, throwing Sephiroth, Yuffie, Vincent and Zack into the mix as well. There were other original characters in the mix too, but most of them came across like Tekken character ripoffs. I mean, the main character is called Ken Godhand Mishima, for God's sake. He's even got the same glove that Jin and Kazuya wear. In fairness to Ehrgeiz and its developer Dream Factory, the company's chairman was Seiichi Ishii, who served as a designer for both Virtua Fighter and Tekken, so Ehrgeiz isn't ashamed of wearing its Tekken colours proudly. However, the gameplay is wildly different, with characters able to move about freely inside 3D arenas, use parts of the stage as a weapon, and even use unique weapons like swords and so on. The real kicker for Ehrgeiz though is the fully fledged quest mode, which plays like an RPG dungeon crawler complete with minigames, randomly generated dungeons, and level ups. Listen guys, Ehrgeiz isn't what many people with all of their faculties would call a brilliant video game, but it's absolutely mental and we will take another 100 of them, thank you very much. We've brought up Tel Concerto a few times at Cultured Vultures, but can you really blame us? You play as a cute little dog with the most adorable name of Waffle Rye Bread, and this whole game is stuck on the PS1. Don't you just wanna rescue this big woofer, save him from PS1 jail? Waffle was also a dog cop back in the 90s too, which means he has the entirety of Paw Patrol beat. Anyway, with CyberConnect's Little Tail Bronx series receiving a huge boost in popularity thanks to the excellent Fuga Melodies of Steel games, which are infinitely more depressing than Tel Concerto is, it's strange that this hasn't been revisited, but there's a lot less depression here. Tel Concerto is just happy vibes only. No child sacrifice here, thank you. Set in a steampunk fantasy world populated by anthropomorphic dogs and cats, Tail Concerto follows Waffle Ryebread as he clashes with a group of sky pirates known as the Black Cat Gang. That gang is looking for a bunch of magic crystals that are said to power a massive ancient weapon, so Waffle sets out to stop them. As a 3D action platformer, you'll pilot a small mecha known as the Police Robo, allowing you to jump, hover, and pick up various objects in the environment. Tail Concerto doesn't ask much of the player when it comes to the gameplay or following along with the story, but the bright and colourful presentation makes it a perfect game for players of all ages. Again, no child sacrifices here, but you may need to sacrifice feeding your kids for a few weeks to get this one physically. Crikey. Insomniac has been an integral part of PlayStation history ever since the PS1, and while they might have had a brief flirtation with Xbox with the underrated whipper that is Sunset Overdrive, Insomniac have been fairly loyal to the PlayStation brand as it goes. That almost didn't happen though, as Insomniac's first game, Disruptor, was considered to be a commercial failure when it launched back in 1996. It's fortunate that Sony had faith in Insomniac despite Disruptor flopping, as if Insomniac crumpled after that first game, we wouldn't have been blessed with games like Spyro the Dragon or Ratchet & Clank, core pillars of PlayStation's history. And of course, much later, the sadly abandoned Resistance IP and Marvel's Spider-Man. Despite the lack of sales though, reviews would agree that Disruptor was a great showcase of Insomniac's talent. A first-person sci-fi shooter following the wave of success that Doom earned,
which was the style at the time.
You control Jack Curtis, a new recruit to the Lightstormer Corps, who are a group of space marines charged with travelling through the galaxy and maintaining some semblance of order. While you've got plenty of weapons to use, Disruptor ups the stakes by giving Jack a suite of powerful psionic abilities like Shock, Drain, Blast, and Shield. The story might be pretty predictable, but the gameplay shown here was indicative of the quality Insomniac would champion going forward, and given how it's the company's first game, it's a real shame that it's remained locked to the PS1. We're closing out with a banger here, as it absolutely boggles the mind that Silent Hill has been left in the PS1 vaults for so long. Sure, yeah, obviously Silent Hill 2 might be the more successful game, which introduced iconic characters like Pyramid Head and that nurse that makes us feel a bit weird, but the original game is no slouch either. Despite that though, Silent Hill number 1 has been left alone, as it wasn't featured as part of the infamous HD collection with that silly Comic Sans sign, and more recently, Bloober Team skipped the first game entirely to create a remake of Silent Hill 2. For a series that's as beloved and celebrated in the horror gaming genre as Silent Hill, it's baffling that we haven't seen some kind of updated release. Stop what you're thinking and typing, Shattered Memories doesn't count, it's almost a completely different game entirely. Game that first introduced players to the worst town in gaming to live in outside of Raccoon City, Silent Hill follows Harry Mason as he tries to find his lost daughter in the synonymous town. Unfortunately for Hazza, he's stuck with a cult trying to revive a deity, nightmarish creatures from another dimension, a drug trafficking ring, and, if one of the endings is to be believed, aliens. I love the red arrow there, I wouldn't have noticed the alien otherwise. Obvious joke ending aside, Silent Hill set itself apart from its horror contemporaries by being, for lack of a better term, a bit f***ed up. Resident Evil was always about unintentionally camp horror action, and it still got a few good scares, but that original Silent Hill was where the real trauma could be found. Good luck finding it for less than $150 though, it's not even really that rare. Well, outro gang, have I got a treat for you, because I didn't want to see all the people click off the video. I did come up with a theme tune for Rising Zan, but I didn't want everyone to leave. So here we go, it's just for you. Rising Zan, the samurai gunman. If he can't do it, then nobody can. Rising Zan, and then just do that for like a minute. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts on that down below. I've been Jimmy Dillon for Cultured Vultures, and thank you for watching Ryzen Zan, the samurai gunman. If he can't do it, then nobody can. Ryzen Zan, the samurai gunman.